And there we go. We are way early. It is 10:29. Good morning, JR. How are you?
Well, it's afternoon here, man.
Oh, sorry. I forget. Good afternoon. And to those in Hawaii, good morning. Did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. The usual. Ate too much.
Okay.
Eyes, what you name it.
All right.
Ate it.
I have a couple
What
questions
about
on
you?
that. I have a couple
Oh, okay.
questions
Go ahead.
we will get to. Not legal advice and JR here on a Sunday brunch. Welcome to everybody who's here. Going to talk about the normal garbage we talk about, plus whatever else might come up. Please don't rely upon these two knuckleheads here. But hopefully we'll stimulate you and maybe you'll look for yourself and you'll figure out something. Before we get started, of course, is that specific enough? Before we get started, I had some questions for you about Thanksgiving. What's
Sure,
your
have at it.
favorite Thanksgiving dish?
My favorite Thanksgiving dish is probably the stuffing, filling, the bread filling that I make. It's just fantastic. So,
Okay. All right. Nice.
what about
How
you?
about your favorite pie?
Pecan.
You know what? I have an unusual taste. My favorite is blueberry liver. You ever had one of those?
No.
Okay.
Blueberry liver. What the hell is that?
Listen, it's fruit and protein. It's a great combination. If you haven't tried it, don't scoff. Next Thanksgiving, I'll give you the ingredients. You can make it for your family, and let's see how it goes. What's your favorite vegetable?
I don't like vegetables.
Yeah, because
I
sometimes
will.
sometimes the problem is the wheelchairs get in the ways too.
I will eat vegetables if I cook them, but I don't routinely cook them. The only vegetable that I consistently eat is corn on the cob.
All right. Have you ever been? This is an interesting question, I think. Have you ever been on TV?
No. Oh, yes, once back in 1998. I was coming out of Penn State, and the local news station was there, and we're asking students their thoughts on the Monica Lewinsky Bill Clinton scandal.
Nice. How about movie?
No.
All right. So have I ever been on TV? Of course. I was when I was a teenager, I was on there was something called The Gong Show. You ever hear of that?
Yes, I
Okay.
remember the Gong.
Yeah, so a couple of friends of mine and we made up some stupid act, surprisingly, and we were terrible, but being terrible was good in on that show. So we did they had a daytime show, and we were so bad they called us back to do the nighttime show. So we had a good time, and I did a bunch of I think I starred in 9 motion pictures. I don't
9 motion pictures.
and 9. I'm
Wow.
surprised you don't recognize me.
What the hell are you doing here?
I don't know. Just taking a Sunday afternoon off. Before we move on to MMTLP arbitration, which I wanted to address briefly, never date a tennis player. Love means nothing to them.
That's a good one.
You like that one? All right.
Yeah, that was fresh.
All right. One does not need a parachute to go skydiving. One needs a parachute to go skydiving more than once. And last but not least, listen carefully. There are 3 type of people: those that can count and those that cannot. Did you listen to that one?
No, because I'm reading someone's comment and I'm a little offended by it.
Uh-oh.
Brian Bridges. It is pecan pie. Pecan. I've always said it pecan. It's not pecan. Pecan.
I need
When
you
you
to
live in
pay
central
attention.
Pennsylvania, that's what we call it.
Okay. I need to pay attention here. Watch me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Listen to this one. This one takes a little thought. There are 3 types of people: those that can count and those who can't. Thank you for listening.
Those. You stepped your game up a little bit today, man.
Or maybe you're
good.
like at a low point, day or something, or I don't know.
Well, it's 1:30. I'm a little bit more alert.
maybe. So I wanted to briefly touch on I think our last live stream or video, I said we'd go through arbitration, and today I was going to briefly touch on how discovery works in arbitration. MMTLP, since that's what I'm talking about. So normally in a civil lawsuit, if you were in a civil lawsuit, you'd have the right to send out discovery, send out interrogatories, request documents, etc. would be part of the case. In a arbitration, it's limited so that you can exchange documents, which is fine, but any other discovery that you need, you have to ask specifically and make a motion. So I have motions pending. And I kind of wanted to tell you, just so you can have an idea, what kind of documents, and what I'm going to do is I'll do a video on this in more detail. But when you file an arbitration, so if you're the customer like me, if you file an arbitration, what are you expected to turn over to the other side? So you know this before you start. It's not 100%, but it's the general presumption that you're required to. I'm of course objecting to some of them, but just to keep in mind. One, tax returns. You're going to have to give them tax returns. Now, they may be confidential, they may be under a seal, but some people like myself may not want to turn over tax returns because they don't think it has anything to do with the dispute, which is really my issue. I think I mentioned this to JR. I don't think it says anywhere that as a requirement for bringing a FINRA arbitration that you have to disclose your tax return. I don't remember ever seeing it in the agreement I have with Fidelity. I haven't seen it anywhere. I don't see any reason why it's have any relationship to the action. But some people may not care. So I just wanted to disclose it. Financial statements. If you generated financial statements over the prior 3 years, you have to turn them over. And again, for that, they're looking to see if you're inconsistent. If you claim one thing here and claim something else there, or some inconsistency. All your account statements, all documents you receive from the other side, all agreements you have with the other side, all account analysis and presentations that you prepared, all notes, diaries, calendars that you have relating to the dispute, all recordings, logs, notes, telephone calls, all correspondence you received, previously prepared written statements that you've received from people, etc. So it's quite a long list. There's actually 17 different categories. On the flip side, and this is the part I'll do a video on, the broker has to disclose those similar categories to you. And so you get them. Now, again, in my particular case, in our first hearing, Fidelity said they would disclose documents, but it had to be subject to a protective order and a confidentiality agreement, which means basically if I sign it, and I haven't signed it yet, but I probably will. If I sign it, that means I can't disclose those documents absent a court order or something to that effect. But that's what's most likely everybody will have to do if you're involved in arbitration, to get maybe documents that you will find more material. You'll have to sign some agreement. Now you don't have to sign, and then what would happen is that would go to the arbiters. They would make a decision whether the documents should be disclosed or how they should be disclosed. But on the flip side, you don't want to piss off, it's a battle here. You have to be aggressive. I'm going to be super aggressive as we go, but you also don't want to alienate the arbiters because you want them to be reasonable in their decision making. So that's just to keep in mind. So anyway, so that's a section of discovery that you will be required to turn over absent some motion. And again, I'll do a video on the other side of it and a little more detailed as to this, but I thought it would be interesting. And as I said before, JR and I, in the future, we're going to go over the rules, like 1 or 2 rules per week, just to kind of illustrate how the procedure works.
Right.
Anything to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say it's interesting that they want correspondences that you've had on this topic or on your dispute, all notes, all presentations. So does that mean they want copies of all your YouTube videos where you talked about your case?
Oh, interesting. I don't know if they specifically asked for video. Oh, they might have actually.
I
That'd be
mean,
interesting.
you basically been doing a presentation on it for the last 9 months. You filed
Yeah,
right in January.
yeah. I've done like
Why
100.
is that? Why is that? I mean, I guess it is relevant because there's obviously no attorney-client privilege here, but But what are they looking for? I mean, honestly, if they were smart attorneys, they'd be watching this.
Yeah, well, they
That's the
may.
way I see it.
Well, they may have.
Yeah.
They may have. Somebody was telling me, and again, in our last arbitration hearing, they really indicated no interest in resolving it with me, zero. And at no point in time have they contacted me to even offer me $1.50 just to go away. To me, amazing. And there was an intimation again in that last hearing, and it's obviously it's not a public hearing, but it was clear intimation that this was beyond the issue of my shares and paying me for my shares. This happened to be a bigger issue, and I'm sure they have concern. They don't want any ruling to be used against them. And their concern is even if they think I'm full of crap, they are concerned and are going to be very careful that I can't generate a ruling that might impact them. And again, they're a private company, they're hiding and whatever.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I can appreciate that, and you're 110% spot on, but I'd say they've already made mistakes along the way, and that big one is the one we talk about every week. I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of attorney uses a report out of a newspaper as a response to their answer? I mean, I still can't get my head around that. And when I say it, it sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, actually, I described it to a broker. We were talking about it beforehand. I know a broker, and he was subject to an arbitration provision, and I mentioned it to him, and he thought it was a joke when I mentioned it. He just
You
thought
would
it
think,
was. I
yeah.
mean, why would they do again? Makes no sense. And that same gentleman, BK, I believe his initials, um, he just wrote another article, right? And by the way, the broker I was speaking with, basically BK asserted there's no such thing as naked shorting. It's nonsense. We know it's okay. Let's take the opposite end, right? If you're a market maker and you don't screw around and you do what you're supposed to, you can naked short, right? Market maker exception. So even the accusation, let's just assume that there's nothing outside of that. The claim is nonsense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in our case, again, it's attached. The first article is attached as an exhibit to their answer. They've now put it in play. I intend to take his deposition. I've made a motion. It'll be adjudicated over the next month or two, and I really intend to take his motion, and I mean take his deposition. I think it makes sense. And of course, if I'm able to, I'm going to ask everybody, tell me what you got.
Well, let's take a step back. Let's take a step back because are they allowed to put parameters on the questions that you're able to ask him during a deposition? Do they have to keep it relevant? I mean, his article was very generic. He just wrote a follow-up article that's very generic. So clearly everything should be in play.
Yeah, I think everything, and including any contact he's had with Fidelity or other shorts. Yeah, I think unfortunately for them, it opens a door. And
I think his conversation that he had with general counsel at FINRA is subject then as well too.
yeah, there's no attorney-client privilege. He's just a
That's right.
guy.
He
He's just a
quoted him,
guy.
so you know he had a conversation with him.
Yeah, the only thing that might be protected from a guy like that is if his conversations with counsel for Forbes. Okay, because I guess he works for Forbes or has some relationship with Forbes. So if there's general counsel there and they
Sure.
discuss something, that would be confidential. But if he calls up FINRA, the SEC, or Fidelity, or anybody, there's no privilege. Whether somebody discloses that or not, we don't know. But
Right.
Again, interesting to me that he put out another article and again took the position there's no such thing as naked shorting because again by definition there is, according to Reg Show. We know that. And so anyway, what my friend was telling me that it happens all the time. He was just saying it happens all the time. He said he happened to do it one time, got caught. Not in a big deal. It was like some minor transaction, but he did. And he says it happens all the time.
Oh, look,
And
I'm sorry, just something just popped into my head. It's no different than what we were told back in 2007, 2006. Those mortgages are safe. There's no way the housing market is going to collapse. There's not the defaults aren't that high. Blah blah blah. Well, look, think about everything we were told all the way up until yeah, we were wrong. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just nonsense. I'll bet if you dig deep enough, you could find a couple of articles that Forbes published that said, default rates weren't an issue. They weren't really that high. It shouldn't be an issue, and we'll have a soft landing.
Yeah, we know that the predominant uh picture that was painted was there wasn't a problem, right? Because
Yeah,
Michael Burry, right? We know him, right? We know
right.
he's the guy who was the anti. We don't know that like there's not like 15,000 antis. There's one guy. So all we know that they're either one of two things. Either they're wrong, which is happens, or they're intentionally misstating things. And at this
Hmm.
point in time, I think that it's probably a combination because somebody who took like BK for that gentleman, at the same time he wrote that first article, we know Sabi came out, we know Sorrento
Yeah.
Therapeutics, that was public knowledge. So that to me it suggests that what he was doing was intentional, not just incompetence. But I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
And
he's either a
again,
complete idiot or he did it on purpose. I mean, that's really, I mean, that's all you got.
Fidelity, that's something Fidelity is relying upon. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity to question him. And again, ultimately, and this is another thing I discussed with the broker, if they limit us in terms of the discovery we can get, yes, I'm going to federal court. Yes, I am going to federal court. Not going to sit on it. And I think, and one of the topics we were going to talk about was Cherkesy and Alpine, because they're both kind of relevant. Cherkesy is a Supreme Court case related to the SEC and whether they have the authority basically to conduct their legal business. That is going to be heard this week in the Supreme Court.
Three
I think
days.
I think Wednesday. So that's the SEC, and Alpine, and there's some other cases. There's Kim and another case that are similar cases to that, but involving FINRA. And
Hmm.
so I think what's going to happen, I really do think this. I think Cherkesy will be decided before my arbitration. My arbitration is June 17th. It's interesting timing. And if it's
Well, when's the session end?
it just
Session
starts
ends in
June.
June.
Yeah, it'll be over. It'll be over.
Yeah, the
Just whether the
session will be.
decision.
Yeah, I would imagine there's going to be a decision by before June.
Oh yeah, I think it'll probably be spring. I think it'll be no later than spring. But I think
Hmm.
it will, if it's a decision that impacts the SEC's ability to conduct legal proceedings within their own core legal structure and they have to go to federal court. I think that will be a big victory for the non-regulatory people. And it suggests to me that it'll impact FINRA even more so, I think, because one is least part of the government, and one, right, at this point in time, is acting as if they're not. And if their actions are not constitutional, I don't see how FINRA is not impacted that way too. And I think we'll get some ruling on at least the SEC case before that. And what was interesting is I saw what the questions were before the Supreme Court. Three questions. I happened to saw it on the docket. Is there a violation of the Seventh Amendment? So that's the right to a jury trial. Since they're
Right.
seeking monetary damages or some kind of fine, the Supreme Court is deciding, does that violate this right to a jury trial under the Seventh Amendment? The second point is that the court is deciding is whether the non-delegation doctrine prohibits the SEC from acting outside of federal court. And again, this is whether some important state function is being allocated to either the SEC or private, and whether that can be done. And the third, and it's kind of what we talked about, I didn't realize that we were that spot on. The third is whether the appointments clause uh, should exclude the SEC from being able to conduct legal proceedings outside of federal court. Appointments
Right.
clause is if there's something that should be administered by the executive branch, like choosing judges, that should be the federal executive branch should have the right to either hire, fire, and as it's asserted now, it doesn't work. SEC chooses, FINRA chooses, and the Fed stays out of it. So those are the three questions. which kind of are the questions that we've seen in all the Alpine briefs too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we've been talking about them for months now.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Probably take a few months for a ruling, but it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I don't know if the appellate court in Alpine will wait to see the ruling in Jerkesi before they issue a ruling. I don't know.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see if Jarkowski gets mentioned in oral arguments during the Alpine hearing. And as you and I indicated, we're gonna, once it's on the schedule, we're gonna try and figure something out. So
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I was going to touch on it a little more in a different setting, but it'll be interesting because both those cases may impact your right to arbitrate, or how you have a right to arbitrate, or the rules of arbitration, or the obligation of FINRA to comply with the Constitution, because as of now, they're not. They're not considered a state actor. So all that stuff's going to happen, I think, within the next 6 months, or at least a major decision impacting it will happen within the next 6 months. And I think it's going to be really on point to all these tickers and the conduct that we're talking about. Maybe that's also why it's being considered in part. Maybe, it's not just that there's a pushback on the regulators, but maybe there's a pushback on the system itself. And here is another part. And this might be, for all those out there, MMTLP, apes, whoever else who are pushing, there probably is some impact on that. It has to kind of get through and be read. So I appreciate the pressure.
well, I mean, I think there's a lot in what you just, like, literally what you just said, on both the micro level and the macro level. On the micro level, if you look at MMTLP in a vacuum, the congressional push, the education, everything that's going on with the MMTLP community in Congress right now. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. When we started meeting with some of these folks, they'd have glazed eyes over. And now, when we talk to these folks, you're hearing, yes, I've talked to someone. I have a general idea of what happened and what's going on, but I have, X, Y, and Z question, or, refresh my memory, let me know, who all you've talked to. And so we're seeing a tremendous amount of that. So the education alone in Congress with MMTLP is having a huge impact. Now, think about this, and you and I've talked about this in the past. When we first started this congressional push back in April, what did they do? James Angel showed up, right? James Angel put on this fancy presentation with his great PowerPoint, and basically was a misdirection. That's all it was a misdirection. Where are the James Angels at now? Why aren't we seeing more of a push from the other side in Congress? Because they can't do it. They can't send them in there. Because the next step, there's no misdirection here. The next step is to put someone in Congress that lies to congressional offices. That's all they got. So you're not going to see that anymore. So that means we've now got free reins walking the halls of Congress, calling these people, sending letters to educate these people. That's on the micro level. The macro level, which I think is the next topic you maybe had on the list, is what we're seeing in South Korea and Thailand. You're now starting to see these governments go, whoa, what the hell's going on here? Our markets are being basically decimated. These smaller companies are being decimated. People are basically being robbed, and they're tired of it. I saw that tweet out there that Ham put, and I don't know, there was a question. Somebody asked a question, and my response was, now that South Korea did what they did, they put a temporary ban in place, and so they know there's going to be a subsequent investigation. They're going to start to come into some of these big banks and look at their books and find out what they've been doing. So now these big banks have to take that liability and they have to shift it somewhere. Where they're going to shift it, I don't know. They're going to put it somewhere, but they can't keep it in South Korea, because if they keep it in South Korea, there's the exposure. So they got to move it. So now they're going to move it somewhere. Now, where they move it is likely on top of already, a fairly large size liability. So now it just made that liability bigger. So now you got to wonder, wherever they moved it to, aren't those regulators going to be like, hey, what the hell's going on here? And now Thailand just came out and said they're doing something. So you're seeing action on the micro level and you're seeing action on the macro level. So it's only a matter of time before those two things converge, and you have a multitude of things that can happen. Number one, the whole system implodes. Number two, the system doesn't implode. The regulators step in. They say we got to take care of this. We're going to fix it, or they get caught, or they get caught. So it really is. It's we got a front row seat basically to all this.
Yeah, so William and Ham are going to South Korea, Singapore, somewhere else, South Los Angeles, I think. Uh, I don't know, but they're going somewhere. Maybe this week. I don't
Coming
know.
to Hershey? What's going on in
Maybe
Hershey?
Hershey too. I guess they're going to meet with regulators or meet with people that are interested in that. What I
Yeah, but
found
see,
fascinating about this is to me the irony, right? So who is going to South Korea to help in dealing with the naked shorts and being naked shorts being an erroneous names, just counterfeiting.
counterfeit
Yeah,
shares.
yeah, counterfeiting. That's all. So who's going there to deal with the counterfeiting shares? Regulators from the United States. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's
That
like the
does.
Pinkerton police. They got the big hats on. They're just running around in circles.
Yeah, that gives me great comfort that
Yeah, totally
FINRA
very confident.
FINRA is going to tell South Korea how to fix their counterfeiting problem. That really makes comfort. And by the way, when you're saying what they do with the liability, hopefully they don't send the liability back to the United States, right? Because maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah,
You know, part of that is there'll be an investigation. That you were talking about, that investigation is going to show, right, not just what's happening in South Korea, but how that stuff came to South Korea. I think maybe that's why the regulators are there,
yeah.
not to help so much, but maybe to confidentially correct things. I don't think there's any reason to think that the regulators are trustworthy.
No,
I don't think
no.
you have any reason to suspect they're going to be transparent. I think maybe they're there again to protect their own interests.
Well, it comes down to, if it's like any other job. You're in that job for 15 years. You've been doing that job. This is the way the world has been working. So you turn a blind eye, and now all of a sudden someone comes to you and says, "Hey, you know, the Jigger Shop Bank has a $50 billion liability on their books. What the hell is that?" Well, I don't know. They've had it there for the last 5 years. Well, you've been in this role for 15. What the hell have you been doing? Nobody wants that. Nobody
Yeah.
wants that. So they're going to look the other way. None of these people want any of that to happen, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that are responsible.
Yeah, and either
Reality.
they're, yeah, at some point in time, listen, because it happens. If there's a problem in the security system, at some point in time, it'll blow up. That's if there's a problem in the banking system. At some point in time, it'll blow up. It just does. It's a matter of when that happens. We have no control over. But maybe, and I heard some people talking about this. Maybe a way that they deal with it is maybe they deal with a handful a year. They pick a few to deal with, and I'm just going to make up three. So let's say in 2024, in January, they decide to take care of MMTLP, finger motion, and GTII. Just kind of pick three random
You just
random
pulled those
dickers.
three out of the air,
Bang,
right?
bang, bang. And so they try to calm the streets. They try to calm the most aggressive out there who are pursuing it. And maybe the next year they deal with, AMC and GME and Mullen, and then it's so on and so on. And the
Well,
people that are in charge and have risk of losing their jobs, they move on anyway.
here's my thought on what you just said, and you and I have had this conversation, but it's been a while. They got the free pass on AMC, GME, and NOK, and Bed Bath and Beyond when they shut off the buy button. They got the free pass because we were uneducated. They're not getting a free pass because of MMTLP. We know exactly what happened. I said this to someone else. The fact that they stopped it trading was probably ultimately is going to come back to be the worst thing they did. You and I've talked about this. You know, it was a huge mistake. Number one, people were so educated in what was going on just about MMTLP. People knew exactly what should have happened. And the sad part about it is it should have started happening back in July of 2022 when that first S1 came out. The compliance department is in these broker dealers should have went into the accounts, looked and saw, oh gosh, we're 40% over our allotment. We got to start buying back some of these shares, and slowly did it. They didn't do it then. They should have done it when the second version came out, the third version, but they sure as hell should have done it on November 18th, 2022, and they didn't.
And
And I one more comment. I still love that email from Sam Drady or Drady or whatever the hell his name is. Hey, this is hitting our fraud desks. I'm guessing it's hitting yours 2 days before the halt. It's only
yeah.
hitting your fraud desk now. Are you fucking kidding me? What have you been doing since July?
And on top of that, even absent that, let's say they didn't stop it, let it trade and close. Let it trade. As we now know, because we've watched it now, more stocks that get shorted and how it's difficult to trade. It's not like it's easy, and it's also psychologically difficult to trade because at some point in time you want to sell and get out. So
Yeah.
I firmly believe they could have run the price up at a much lower degree than the prices that everybody suspected it would have gone to, and most of the people would have gone out. They would have sold out, and the liability, the eventual liability, would be peanuts. I think, beyond everything else, I think they misjudged that too.
Yes. I think the big misjudgment on their part was, kind of what's happened the last 11 months. And I know it's been a long 11 months for a lot of people, but that was a huge misjudgment on their part. And we know that. We know it was misjudgment because look what happened to Dr. Angel. He went into Congress. He was going to sell the same nonsense that has been sold to congressional people for the last, 30 years. And within 2 months, he was irrelevant. He's gone.
Yeah.
And you haven't seen someone step in there since. So yeah, look, that to me was the biggest misjudgment on their part. They thought that they were just going to do this and everything was going to be hunky dory. Don't worry about it, they're going to fade away. And we talk about this all the time. And look, there's Dr. Edwards on. There's doctors, there's lawyers, there's white collar, there's blue collar, there's passionate people, there's smart people that are working on this stuff every single day. There's a community out there that's driving calls, driving emails, driving letters. And we're doing all that because we know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, again, part of this is that it's blatant. This is not a lack of transparency. This is just kind of pretending it doesn't exist. Uh, you know, it's that really. It's because it's not in dispute. So
Yeah,
I hope that they're successful. By the way, in South Korea and Thailand, I hope it blows back. Blows back. If there's reason to blow back, if there's naked shorting that's gone from the United States into the South Korean markets, then that should be disclosed. Any of that stuff that's disclosed, I think, works for our benefit. To the extent that there's naked shorting elsewhere, I think it works for the benefit. Part of the issue that we've faced, right, is the calculations of naked shorts. Once they get out of the United States, they're gone.
it would be interesting. Is someone going to South Korea that we know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Hammond,
should have a conversation with him so that he can specifically ask questions on MMTLP. You go over there and find out there's 2.5 million shares sold in the South Korean market. FINRA's numbers don't work anymore.
yeah, that's a good idea. We can make
Yes,
throw
we
something out.
absolutely should have that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Uh, they're going, I think, primarily deal, at least the reason, besides the bigger reason, they're going for finger motion. I think they were
Sure,
going to
sure,
meet
makes
people.
sense.
I think finger motion is operates out of Singapore primarily, and I think they were going to meet potential shareholders in Hong Kong. At least that's what was said. I have no reason to doubt it. And again, I wish them good luck, and I think we shall provide some at least questions for them
And
to answer.
and I'm going to make one more comment, then we can move on to the next topic. And why that question is so relevant right now, and why that question is able to be asked with some level of specificity, is because remember, we are frozen in time. There's no trading. There's no back and forth. There's no way to hide this shit. It's on the books, and they can't make it disappear.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I'm done. I'm done. I said it all, man. I'm done.
Okay. You're done. By the way, just to be clear, I'm not a vegetarian because I love animals. I'm a vegetarian because I hate plants. The
Yeah.
Fifth
Now,
Circuit.
see, look, 3. You got to stick
Hey,
to 3. You said some good jokes earlier, and then you threw that one out there, and you messed it up, man.
I have one more. I have one more in the bag.
Please don't.
The Fifth Circuit. I thought this was interesting. The Fifth Circuit requires now. So if you file something in the Fifth Circuit, you have to disclose if you used AI, and if you used AI, whether someone independently verified the accuracy of the AI. I thought that was pretty interesting.
To write a brief?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you rely upon AI to write a brief, because I think there are programs now that you can do that, the court requires you to disclose that.
Well, my own personal opinion, I look, I have a passion for writing. People that have worked with me know that. That I will tell you my favorite movie quote, and I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but my favorite movie quote is, words are the most explicable form of magic, capable of inflicting harm and remedying it. Any lawyer that uses AI, ChatGPT, Bard, any of those stupid programs to write their brief should be disbarred immediately. It's that simple.
Nice. I
That's
like
simple.
that. That's good. I like that. Okay. Are you resigning? Is
I'm on
that
a roll,
right?
dude.
Are you
You got
announcing
like 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. I'm up. I'm up.
you're announcing your resignation? Is that what you're saying? Okay. No, I must have misunderstood what you said. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of spooky, honestly.
It is.
Maybe eventually everything's gonna be written that way and that'll be it. But now it seems like cheating on a paper, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. It's no different than Wikipedia. When Wikipedia first came out, I was teaching college level courses, and I taught a writing class. And I can't tell you how many times students would go into Wikipedia, cut and paste it,
By
forget
the
to
way,
take the link,
can I ask you a question?
forget to take the link out.
What is a college level course? Is that like 6 feet off the ground?
It
Is
was
that on the
10. I
second
was teaching
floor?
101. I was teaching intro classes, so
Okay.
101 level. I did teach a 200 level class. I forget what that was now. This was 10, 15 years ago, but but it was amazing. And because it was an online class, they had to upload, the Word document or PDF document, and inevitably they would forget to remove the hyperlinks. And I'd go in, I'd click on the hyperlink, it would take me right to the page, and I could see verbatim right there was their essay.
Yeah, I find
F, zero.
hyperlinks too exciting myself, but
You're a
that's me.
hyperlink.
That's just me. That's just me. You didn't say what you taught.
I taught civil liberties. I taught compensation and benefits. I taught employee benefits. I taught an HR intro class. I taught a health management class in human resources. I taught a writing class for 2 semesters. I taught a health, welfare, and safety, which focused on workplace health, welfare, and safety. Yeah, that's what I
Wow.
taught.
I I only taught one class, goldfish, trout, and chocolate pudding. It was a third level, not second level.
I have a cooking show you don't know about. I haven't shared it with you.
I don't. I'm very impressed, by the way, very impressed. Let's move on to Alpine. Alpine, so we kind of touched on it with Jerkesi, which we can't pronounce.
John, Leader Landscape Incorporated is John. John, I apologize if I'm butchering your name, John Bowen. And if you know John, John is very religious, super nice guy. And I forgot to tell you, he cracked a lawyer joke the other day, but excluded me because I apparently said something smart, and he was like, "Dude, you're safe now. You're going to heaven. You don't have to worry about it because you're a lawyer." And so I said I need to tell that to Richard.
You didn't tell me.
So he just said I got my win.
All right.
I love it.
All right. Whatever.
Thanks for the laugh, John.
Yeah. Hi, Busy, by the way. Just saw you. That was out of my left eye, by the way. Didn't see out of the right eye, out of the left eye.
Well, I'm watching them. I'm watching them.
All right. So Alpine's interesting because Binance is just was you saw the story about Binance, the crypto exchange that just got basically
Now,
the feds
I,
went
I,
after them.
I mean, I basically know what's going on there. Oh, I'm sorry. That made me think of something that I wanted to go back to. I apologize. The UBS president came out. Did you see that comment that he made? UBS about
I know they're
regulators need to,
screwed. I know they're screwed, but
yeah,
yeah,
regulators need to be more involved or taking a closer look at things. Yeah,
yeah, they
that's
do.
code
Yeah,
for
we're
boy, somebody
screwed.
really screwed up Credit
Yeah,
Suisse. We're screwed because
yeah,
of it.
we're screwed because we don't. I think literally they don't have. They were restricting withdrawals. I think I saw that. Usually that's kind of like a step
Yep.
in the
Yep.
inevitable that they're going to be out of business before we can shake a stick at them.
It's it's coming.
Yeah, and I
It's
think, by the
coming.
way,
So I apologize.
no, it's fine. I don't know who else is going, but I think Deutsche Bank also at some point in time is going to go south for the winter. But I don't know. But a lot of these just don't. A lot of these banks are operating poorly. That they're not. There's no. It's not a coincidence that they're going out of business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly. So sorry, Alpine. My bad.
no, sorry. But Binance anyway. Binance just got caught up for money laundering, terrorism funding, and violation of the Bank Secrecy Act. You remember that Bank Secrecy Act?
Oh yeah, where have we heard that from?
Yeah, Alpine. Remember, Alpine got it went up on appeal, but 2,000 or 3,000 violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, which was anti-terrorism, anti-money laundering. So I know Ham spoke to the Secret Service. So if the Secret Service happens to be watching this or would like to watch it, certainly I'll send it to them. Your deal is counterfeiting, besides protecting, politicians, etc. But it's counterfeiting. That's your main non-protection gig. Alpine seems to have a problem.
Yeah.
I think it deserves at least a peek. If
Well,
there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But I think it deserves a peek. And any of the parties that are associated with that, to the extent they're funding terrorism,
well, think about that. Take a step back again. Once again, thousands of violations of a specific thing that they're not supposed to do. 39,000 violations of a cease and desist order. What does it take? What does it
plus
take
the
to put these
sex.
guys out of?
Remember the sex felon that was their
Yeah,
representative.
they advocate for a convicted pedophile, and he was convicted, a
Yes,
convicted pedophile, to be their communications person with these institutions.
I heard.
What?
By the way, there was a rumor that Charles Manson was going to write their theme song.
Oh my god! Now that was funny. What does it take? What does it take for our regulators to go? This is a problem. We have got to shut these guys down. What value do they bring to the market? It seems like they break the law more than the value add to society, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it makes no sense. Obviously, it makes zero sense. The only thing that makes sense to me is why they don't do it is because they're afraid of giving up power. They're afraid of having to go through the federal court system to get done what needs to be get done. And if they do that, then they're kind of going to lose their position that FINRA and the SEC can operate their own judicial system independently, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I would somewhat agree with that. Yeah, they clearly don't want to go into federal court and give up that power because then they concede their position in the Supreme Court. It just boggles the mind. It boggles the mind that we're here. It boggles the mind that our regulators, don't do anything. They turn a blind eye, and then everybody sits back and wonders why there's such an uproar, and why why society is so loud and so obnoxious. When our government fails to do basic things like protect us from other U.S. institutions they should be protecting us for. It's just a problem.
Yeah, I blame Busy Brands mostly for that. I think he's
Yeah, I
the
do
main
too. I'm
cause.
tired
My
of it.
opinion. Just my opinion. My opinion. So Alpine, we have the Bank Secrecy Act problems, but on top of that, we had now, so there's the appeal going on. So repeat. So Alpine is connected to GTII and it was the prime broker, and there's an issue of naked shorting and other shenanigans that go on. Alpine's in a appeal now with regard to an injunction. We think that's the aspect that might or could go up to the Supreme Court potentially, depending on the outcome. But all the briefs have now been filed because last week on the 17th or 18th, the reply brief of Alpine was filed. And they basically reiterated what they said before. There was constitutional violations, right, etc. But what's interesting to me is in an injunction, the issue besides who has power and rights, there's equitable arguments. So equitable is fairness, basically. And so the law is there's statutes and cases. So literally there's statutes and cases and people follow those. And then there's equity. Equity is not statute or a case. Equity is just doing fairness and acting in good faith. And there's courts of equity that have the right to do that. And in this injunction, part of the decision-making requires that the party that's getting the injunction is acted in good faith. So there have been like tons of briefs that have been filed in this appeal, but very little discussion about that one issue. And in Alpine's final brief, they addressed it very briefly, and they said it was in the interest of the public to adhere to the Constitution, and so they were protecting the Constitution. They also said they suffered irreparable harm, which is a requirement of an injunction. Now, how could they suffer irreparable harm? I don't know, but they're claiming that expedited proceeding. So FINRA went in, they tried to get an expedited expulsion, but that has not been completed. So there's been no final ruling, and there's rights of appeal. So I don't see how denial of the injunction by the appellate court would cause irreparable damage to Alpine, because they would still have the hearing to go through and they would still have appeals to go through. And they have a right to raise this issue if it applied down the road. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the benefit to society by Alpine protecting our constitutional rights. One, these constitutional rights really aren't directed at us. They're very narrow and specific, directed at Alpine. And these are scumbags. Literally dozens of violations in which they've been penalized. Yeah. This is not in the interests of the public. So I think the appropriate decision should be for the appellate court to deny the injunction because they haven't met the standard. That doesn't stop them from some future point raising their constitutional arguments, and I'm sure they will. But at this point in time, I think the court should agree with the lower court and deny Alpine's appeal. That's the way I see it. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Well, I mean, we talked about this. I agree with you. I mean, they have a hard time showing any level of good. I mean, just go back to what we just said: 2,000 violations of the Bank Secrecy Act, 39,000 violations of a cease and desist order. I mean, I would make the argument if I were FINRA, they have no respect for the rule of law, and they've proven that time and time again. So I'm like you. I'm leaning 80% that they're going to get their injunction denied, but you never know.
Yeah, and so the courts are supposed to rule as narrowly as possible. So right. They're not supposed to address issues that they don't have to reach the ruling. And so in this kind of case, they could address constitutional issues. They could go, like we were talking about Jerkesi, and we talked about non-delegation. We talked about the appointments clause. If a court of appeal wants to go into that stuff, they can, but they're really not supposed to if they get decided on narrower grounds. Narrower grounds would be here that they didn't satisfy the grounds for an injunction, and that's it. And if they want to bring it up later on, so be it. I think, though, if that was the finding, there would be a positive response in GTII. It's certainly not a final decision,
Right.
but it would suggest, it would kind of reaffirm, I think, the bad faith argument against Alpine. My opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We often talk that what would the implications of this be on GTII and a multitude of other things. The capybara one on finger. This It's all the same. We don't know. We
Yeah,
just at the end of the day, we don't know.
yeah. If in fact there's like because there's an issue about a short squeeze and what would cause a short squeeze, we never know. What action's going to cause that, and I just think that maybe there'll be a positive reaction to a result. That's all. It
Right.
may be like a temporary. People see that. For example, we're describing what it means because it doesn't really mean a final, right? It's
Right.
a decision on the injunction. But if you're out there, so there's an algorithm reads everything that comes out. It sees there's a decision in a court of appeal. The decision is Alpine loses their appeal. That might be enough for an algorithm to kick in and buy or do something that is consistent with that finding. That may not be a human being that's making that decision. We
Right.
don't know, obviously.
We
We
don't
have no
know.
idea. We have no idea how it goes. Two quick matters. We're trying to keep this to an hour today, by the way. Two quickies. I wanted to talk because I love Tesla. So I wanted to talk to you about Tesla, and I also wanted to talk to you about a way something was framed legally. And by the way, my first job was working at a orange juice plant, but I got canned because I couldn't concentrate.
It's five. That was
So, all
that
right,
was your 499 joke, Busy.
all right. So Tesla, two things. One, there was a legal decision that came out this week. It was actually a headline. The headline was that the court has found that Tesla and Elon Musk were aware of the fact that autopilot had certain defects. Autopilot and actually full self-driving is ultimately going to be the autonomous system that'll let you drive the car without you driving the car. So the article said what I indicated, that the court had found this. In reality, of course I looked at it and I doubted that's what the court said just by the headline. So I went back and looked. And of course, that's not what the court said. And it also didn't make sense. So there's something called a motion for summary judgment. So that means after somebody files a complaint, after discovery is done, but before trial, you can file a motion. And if there's no dispute of facts, if all the parties agree on the facts and maybe it's just an issue of law, the court can look at that and apply the law that it decides. But if there's a dispute of fact, so let's say JR says the light was red and I say the light was green, and so we have a dispute, then the court can't make that decision. It has to go to a jury, and the jury then makes a factual determination. So in this case, there was evidence out there from which somebody might be able to draw the conclusion that Tesla could have known about a defect in self-driving. So because the judge determined that someone might be able to draw the conclusion, the court denied Tesla's motion for summary judgment because there was dispute of facts. There was no finding of a defect in the autopilot system. It was just a legal finding that a motion for summary judgment was not appropriate. And so this is what the headline said. So I'm cognizant of it. So I saw it and I suspected it was inaccurate. But it's like every other headline or a large number of headlines we see, you cannot trust the accuracy. Beyond that, a lot of times a headline is written by somebody different than the person who wrote the article. But I urge you to be really careful in making conclusions about what you read or hear, because somebody may not know or may be trying to deceive you. Either one could be innocent, that they're just inept and they don't know, or it could be they just are trying to deceive you. So that's one thing that caught my attention. The other thing which is interesting is Tesla's version 12 went out to the employees. Version 12 is, and I'll explain what this means, is level 4 autonomy. So when it's done, and it'll be done soon, that means you can drive your car. You have to be in the front seat, but you do not have to intervene. So the car will drive for you. At that point in time, you still have to be in the front seat. And theoretically, I guess if somebody hits you, you could have the ability to change. But it's at that point, you will not have to touch. Level 5 is the next stage after that. Level 5 means there's no steering wheel, no pedals. So there's no driver. That's the next step. So what's interesting is now Elon, who has been questioned at times, his timelines haven't always been accurate. About 2 weeks ago, he indicated that version 12 was going out, and it went out, I think, yesterday, day before. So this is a very large step in autonomous driving. And it'll probably, starting in 2024, it'll probably be a big public issue because it's a big regulatory issue and it's a big societal issue. Can you imagine now people are going to be in cars and not driving them? And it'll be a big cultural change because a lot of people will have to change jobs. For example, the trucking industry will be very different. If you can automate trucking because it's cost effective, then the truckers have to find different engagements. So it creates a big issue because part of the issue is people have to be trained in new jobs. They have to be given new industries to do, or else they'll be super pissed off, right? Just because somebody creates a new technology, if somebody loses their job and is in a worse economic position, they're not going to be too happy about it. But just like I think around the turn of the 20th century, the Industrial Revolution probably kicked tons of people out of work, but it created all new industries and jobs. And I would expect the same thing to happen now. But it's an interesting thing. And since I follow Tesla pretty carefully, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Last but not any comment?
I was just going to say, we had that exact same conversation when I hope I don't butcher his name. Was it Farzai? Farzai was on, and he was talking about exactly what you were talking about. Is basically the trucking industry and what self-driving vehicles would do to the trucking industry.
Yeah.
I tend to think that we're probably going to get there someday, but I don't know if it's going to be in my lifetime. The truckers unions are powerful. There's a lot of money at stake by eliminating truckers union. I would see a lot of pushback.
Oh, I'm sure ton of pushback, but ultimately though, if it's effective and if it's cheaper, if it's faster, if it's cleaner, and we can find new industries for people to make a living on, then it's a no-brainer, I think.
Well, the other thing, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, the other thing you have is the cultural, just the cultural change. I freely admit I don't know if I'm ready to get on my motorcycle, take it around the block, and be behind a truck that's not being driven by anybody. I'm going to be very concerned.
I understand.
So not only do you have the trucking industry that is, obviously opposed to something like this, but you have the everyday driver that's looking around. Well, what the hell is going on? There's nobody in these cars.
I understand. I agree with you, but sometimes things can be thrust upon you faster than you expect. Just like this AI, the AI stuff, right? CPAI, when people started using that was out of the blue, right? Then people started asking questions and whatever. It determined, it's not 100% accurate because there's certain issues with its ability to discern, for example, humor. It can't discern humor versus,
sounds like you.
Yeah, I know. Or exaggeration or cynicism, those kind of things it can't determine. But over the last year, there's been a huge move. And 5 years ago, I never would have been able to predict that. So
yeah, but that's something that doesn't affect the everyday average person. The everyday average person is in the car 50 times. And so from a cultural standpoint, and I'm not disagreeing with you, you're absolutely right. Something very easily could get thrust upon us. But I have to take a step back and think, well, I know what I'm thinking. Am I going to want to be work? I'm going to think twice about passing a truck. There's just so
Oh
many
yeah,
other things
there's
that
no
the
question. You
average
have to get it.
person that's
Yeah.
not even involved in this is going to be concerned about.
You're going to have to get accustomed to it. It may frighten a lot of people. I think part of it also has to be that the manufacturers have to take 100% financial responsibility, so that if there's anything that goes wrong, you have to be comfortable that that's going to be taken care of. I think that's part of the equation, which means it has to be at a point that they feel comfortable enough that they're not going to have to be paying out lots of money. Anyway, we've gone exactly an hour. I'm glad everybody joined us today. Happy brunch. Hope you enjoyed whatever you ate.
First
I
off,
didn't eat anything.
it's brunch for you. It's not brunch for me, man.
It could be a late brunch. I've done the brunches that were 11 to 3.
Does California observe daylight savings time? I
Yeah,
think they do. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So you're still 2 hours behind me.
yeah. I'm
So
still at 11. No, I'm 3 hours behind.
you're three. Oh, that's right. You're 3 hours.
Yeah,
3 hours.
I'm
My bad.
11.
So
I'm 11:30 a.m. You're
yeah. So it's
2:30.
brunch for you. I mean, at this point, my stomach's sitting here roaring because I only ate popcorn for lunch.
I know, but I'm sorry. I know it's a very
I'm just
sad thing. Very sad. I'm glad. I hope you survived the afternoon. Anyway,
yes.
thank you, JR. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us. Again,
Good
if you have any
conversation.
questions, comments later on, feel free to comment. We will look at them and I'll address them all. Everybody be well. I will address more about the arbitration and about something I wanted to talk about, the national anthem. I'll do my next video, which I think is an interesting story. But anyway, everybody else, be well, take care, see you soon, and have a great day.
Bye,
I can turn
everybody.
this thing off. And here we go.